He seemed disturbed at her suggestion and spoke clearly, but his words were sharp and held an edge. There will be no more training sessions. I will see you at the arena, princess. Opening the door, he entered and banged it close behind him without letting her explain any further. The day of the arena dawned amidst thunderstorms and lightning. The warm weather morphed into a cooler, pleasant one. Cassandra hadn't trained with Cyrus after he had said they would meet on the arena day. She wasn't sure what had him pissed. The fact that she asked him to save himself, or the fact he was stuck with someone like her. He was weird, mysterious, and haughty, and he knew no one would dare harm him before the event, or they could incur the wrath of his alpha. Exactly why he wasn't afraid of anyone. Cassandra woke up with the thunder rumbling in the sky. Her heart felt uneasy due to some reason, and she wondered about the dream she had. It was mostly the same dream, where she was dressed like some ethereal being and lived in a place with blinding light. There was always someone nearby, hidden behind the haze and the mist. All she could see were the gold-infused eyes, the eyes that seemed very much like Cyrus's. She wondered if she had seen him before or if there was some other connection between the two. Pulling off the blanket, she left her thoughts and bed behind her. It was time to get ready and face the day. The door swiftly knocked, and she wondered who it could be there this early in the morning. "Come in," she ordered, and it opened to reveal Lotus with two of her personal maids. She rushed to her sister's side as her maids hurried along, closing the door behind them. "You are up, good. Girls, time to weave magic." She flicked her fingers, and the maids moved towards the wash area with big pitchers of water. Cassandra watched them, slightly bewildered. "What's going on?" "Getting you ready. What else?" "Come on, drop this night's garb and get into the warm, fragrant water." Lotus pushed her towards the brass bathtub where the maids had poured warm water. She swished her hand, and magic pulsed in her veins and danced on her fingertips as it erupted in the form of hundreds of tiny fragrant flowers, plum in shade. They flowed from her hand and into the lukewarm water. Lotus was blessed with nature, affinity, magic. It came naturally to her, and years of training had enhanced it. "I am not sure bathing in flowers will be of any help to me," Cassandra muttered, pulling down her dress and letting it heap around her ankles. "Dear sister, you underestimate me. These are not ordinary flowers. These are hydralias, known for their healing and protecting properties. Bathing in their water, the essence will be infused in your skin. Hence, it will heal your injuries and protect you against basic spells." The care in her words warmed Cassandra's heart, and she couldn't help but fondly stare at her sister. "Get in now before it gets cold. Wash her nicely." Lotus ordered both Cassandra and the maids. She was scrubbed clean and dried up while Lotus was ready with her costume. It was the same violet shade as Cassandra's eyes, with patches of silver and blue. The colors represented their kingdom. Natural fibers spun by Lotus and metallic plates she had acquired had been used to create it. The plates embedded in the parts to protect her soft areas. It will help in agility and will protect you against claws and fangs or whatever those creatures will have. Put it on. I sent something for your warrior as well. Lotus handed the costume to a bewildered-looking Cassandra. At any moment, she could end up crying. "Stephanie will kill you," Cassandra choked out, accepting the costume while holding the tears at bay. "That's in the future. We have no time to waste," Lotus nonchalantly replied, flicking her beautiful hair back. Maids helped Cassandra put on the skin-tight trousers and a leather jerkin on top. The royal blue cloak was adjusted on her shoulder to complete the look. A fitting warrior. "Maid, you look incredible." Lotus held her shoulders and gushed at her younger sister. Her eyes twinkled with love. "I am no mage. Everyone knows that," Cassandra answered painfully. "Nonsense. You won't win with this attitude. Here, I brought you something special." Lotus again clicked her ring-studded fingers. Rings designed with flowers and vines. One of the maids brought forward a sheathed sword in a leather cover. The hilt was visible, which had a big purple gem studded in it. "Here, use this. I have enchanted the sword with my magic. You will be able to use it. There are no rules against enchanted weapons." She gleefully handed the sword to Cassandra, who who had her mouth gaping wide. Lotus continued. This stone belonged to our mother. Her magic has been infused in it. It will protect you and guide you through the darkness. Cassandra's fingertips traced the enigmatic stone, oval in shape and rich in color. Perfectly crafted, it pulsed with magic bound in it. Cassandra could sense it under her fingertips. It called to her. Did you steal it from father? She asked incredulously, and Lotus merely shrugged her delicate shoulders with a meh expression. It was supposed to be yours. Mother gave all of her daughters a stone. Ruby for Stephanie, emerald for me, and this amethyst was yours. Father held it in spite. I am just giving what was meant to be yours. You can get into trouble because of me. I don't want that. Cassandra shook her head, but she couldn't peel her eyes off the powerful gem embedded in the sword. Will you go and win this stupid thing? Stop overthinking. Lotus endearingly smiled at her sister and encouraged her. Cassandra was overwhelmed. She threw her arms around her sister and hugged her tightly. If I don't make it, remember I love you and thank you for this. You will be victorious. I have a feeling. Both girls separated, and Lotus left with her maids before Stephanie would find out she was there. Cassandra was making final preparations when her door knocked again. She placed the sword in her halter belt and went to open the door. She fell into those gold chasms which so affectionately stared back at her. Cyrus stood there in all his natural glory, donning a gold-shaded loincloth of a material which would help him move with agility. It was held together by a sturdy belt. Both his arms were adorned with protective leather gear, with metal segments painted in gold. Since he was a shifter, the clothes he wore were kept to a bare minimum. His well-defined chest with mountains of muscles glistened as if he had oiled it, and those corded long legs were on display to be feasted upon. The olive skin was blemish-free, except for a small tattoo on his bicep. His autumn leaf-shaded hair fell into his gold-infused eyes, which reminded her of a beautiful sunset. They were heavy, the kind which wanted her to drown in them and be lost forever. The more she stared, the more mesmerized and lost she felt. Those high cheekbones and rugged contours of his face held unfathomable secrets, the ones she was sure he didn't share with anyone. His gaze was unwavering, too sure as it glided over Cassandra's body, and he drank her in, slowly, like a drunkard starved for wine. She could feel it smoldering her, inch by inch. The costume felt hot, or maybe the air had been sucked out of the room. Are you ready? His low modulated voice asked. His eye contact never broke. Yes, come. He gestured with his hand, and Cassandra quietly exited the room. They had barely taken a step when Stephanie appeared, arm in arm with her vampire warrior. She snorted, the pomposity so visible in her tone. If it isn't the duo with no magic and brains, shifters were derogatorily regarded as beings with no brains in the kingdom of Speldaria. So many were captured and put into the arena just to be killed and slaughtered. Stephanie believed Cyrus would meet the same fate since Cassandra had no magic to defend him. Better than having no empathy. Cyrus squared his shoulders and puffed out his chest, a typical tactic to look intimidating. Cassandra had to fight back a giggle. No male had ever stood up for her. This was certainly refreshing to see. His left arm had extended, holding her behind him. The vain smile on Stephanie's lips faltered and was replaced by a snarl. The raven-haired vampire with ruby-shaded eyes swiftly held her waist so she wouldn't launch herself at Cyrus but bared his pointed fangs. I will enjoy tearing your limbs and sucking every last drop of your blood. The vampire threatened, but his voice lacked surety. Something about the man he faced was daunting. We will see in the arena who is going to tear whom, Cyrus casually answered, not at all feeling unsettled. The bong for the commencing of the arena sounded outside. Commander Raziel, followed by his guards, arrived to escort them. Cassandra's eyes wavered to her fiancé, hoping he would acknowledge her. But Commander Raziel was all business, although he met Cassandra's gaze and held it for a few meaningful seconds. Cyrus didn't miss the silent exchange between them. I am here to escort all participants to the arena. Please, follow me. Cyrus pinned the raven-haired commander with a sharp look, but silence prevailed. Aren't you going to wish good luck to your fiancé, Commander Raziel? Chances of survival in her favor are slim, Stephanie teased, knowing too well they had a rocky relationship and Raziel hardly ever spoke to Cassandra. Good luck, Princess Cassandra, he curtly said. There were no feelings in his words, and he hardly glanced in her direction. A low, rumbling growl was erupting in Cyrus's throat. His hands wished to turn into claws, but his thoughts were interrupted when Cassandra spoke meekly. Thank you. We should go. Shoving his temper down, Cyrus took a moment to control his natural urges. Stephanie and her warrior went ahead with Commander Raziel. Cassandra and Cyrus followed behind by the guards. They exited the majestic castle and arrived outside the arena. Unlike the last time, today it was brimming with spectators. Other contestants joined them. Cassandra observed there were a total of 8 teams. Each contained 1 mage and 1 warrior. Commander Raziel led them through one of the tunnels and into the ground with rammed earth where Cassandra and Cyrus had dueled earlier. Cyrus protectively guarded her with his body, never letting anyone in her proximity. The crowd erupted with thunderous applause and cheers seeing the contestants enter. Cyrus had that confident stride while Cassandra seemed slightly shaken. They took their positions in front of the high podium covered with silver and blue awnings. Lavish and comfortable divans were covered in velvet and cushions where Cassandra's father, Thalorian LeBlanc, sat along with other guests. The High Mages, the Elven King, the Vampire Monarch, and several alphas from the Shifter Packs. Cassandra raised her head and wondered which one of them was the most feared alpha of the Dusartine. Glancing around, she observed the blue and silver flags and paraphernalia had been raised on poles and decorated the entire arena. The magic pulsed in air, thickening it as repelling spells had been placed all around the grandstands so spectators wouldn't get hit from the random spells in battle. All curious eyes were fixed on them as the presenter began to speak. Welcome to the yearly Arena of Death event. The atmosphere was charged with shouts and anticipation of the fights from tens and thousands of teeming people, too excited to see others getting bloody and torn apart. The mere thought sickened Cassandra. She wasn't a fan of bloodshed, especially in the name of sport. This year's event is special. Instead of one, we have 2 mage princesses taking part in it. Let's hear it for our current champion, Princess Stephanie, and her warrior, Prince Kamen. The crowd hollered, the noise so loud that Cassandra wished to cover her ears. The presenter continued to speak, but with slightly less enthusiasm. And the youngest, Princess Cassandra, along with her shifter warrior, Cyrus. The crowd held their applause, and the arena went into slight silence. What was a non-magical princess doing there? Enthusiasm. Cyrus's eyes wandered towards the people. Only a few cheered for Cassandra, and he noticed it all. Even her father, who had an affectionate smile going on when her elder sister was introduced, now sat with a stoic face. The presenter moved ahead, presenting the other teams and laying out the rules of the tournament. There weren't many except one requiring to spare a life if someone yielded. Killing the opponent was allowed if one didn't surrender. The winning team would move to the next round, and the last remaining 2 teams would face each other in the final. Let's take a bow for our special guests and officiate the tournament. May the best team win. The presenter finished his speech, and everyone bowed in respect of the guests of honor. Cyrus made eye contact with an alpha that sat right next to Cassandra's father. He seemed young, in his early 20s, and knowingly nodded at Cyrus. The elegance and class so apparent from the way he sat, with his index finger perched on his temple. A flicker of a smile played on his supple lips. His eyes wavered between Cyrus and Cassandra, making her wonder if he was the alpha of Dusartine. Valerian LeBlanc stood up and flicked his index finger towards his mouth, hence enhancing his voice. Let the arena of death begin. May the best team win. The reward for winning the event includes picking any jewel from my collection. Name it, and I will grant it to you, apart from 2,000 gold coins. Good luck. King Thalarian had an extensive jewels collection. Every kind of precious stone and jewel was part of it. Some enchanted, others holding unique, mysterious powers. People died to get their hands on one of his jewels, and this was quite an opportunity. The crowd roared at his words, excitement running through them like thunder. Thalarian took his seat, and the presenter announced again. The first match will take place between the team of Princess Cassandra and Cyrus V's, the team of Gaudria and Hashi. The war drums banged, and the arena was set on fire by the mages with fire ability. The roaring fires forged the shape of dragons and soared over their heads, mesmerizing the onlookers, followed by mages with water affinity who formed water serpents and chased the fiery dragons in a dance of fire and water. The spectacular sight blew everyone's minds, and reverend guests couldn't help but be entertained as they sipped wine from their golden tankards. The other contestants left the ground, leaving the fore. Once the conundrum of dragons and celebration died down, everyone settled for the real fun. Cyrus took his position in front of Cassandra, his back facing her. Seeing the opponents, Cassandra was slightly shaking. Her hand held the hilt of her sword. "Remember to trust me. I will not let any harm come to you," Cyrus whispered to her over his shoulder, and she nodded, keeping her eyes fixed on the duo of orc and mage. They menacingly watched Cassandra and Cyrus, probably thinking they were easy targets. Gaudria was an orc Hashi had met during his travels to faraway lands. He brought him along for the arena after his first warrior was killed in the last one. Hashi has nature affinity, just like Lotus. Beware of his poisonous vines. "I will handle myself. My sword is imbued with magic," Cassandra told Cyrus. Hashi had trained with Lotus, so Cassandra knew all about his powers. "I appreciate the heads up, and I believe in you," Cyrus answered tenderly, narrowing his eyes at the duo. His eyes flickered with specks of brown as the gong to start the match went off. Cassandra instantly retrieved her sharp sword. It was light, but was infused with magic. Standing at least 8 feet, Gaudria let out a spine-chilling snarl. His thick skin was black, with moldy patches of brown. His mammoth hands were fisted, and the black skin of his lips was peeled back to reveal his sharp yellow teeth. He charged on toward Cyrus, who stood calm and collected. Suddenly, his body began to change as Gaudria drew near. His smooth hands grew thorns, and so did his arms and back. The crowd and guests watched in befuddlement as Cyrus had half transformed into something like a hedgehog. Gaudria jumped in the air and tried to punch and plummet Cyrus to the ground. But Cyrus was quicker and more agile. Dodging his punch, he bent down and landed his own spiky one in the orc's stomach. The spikes punctured his thick skin, while the force sent him flying towards his partner. Hashi was trying to back him with thorny vines sprouting from his hands. They wriggled on the ground, reaching towards Cassandra and Cyrus like rapidly moving snakes. Cassandra swiftly maneuvered her sword. It rippled with magic as she cut them down one after the other. The purple gem glistened and imbued the sword with more of its magic as it glowed, and lilac misty light coated the silver blade. Thalarian narrowed his eyes in confusion. There was no rule against the use of charmed weapons, but hardly anyone ever used it. And that stone, he was sure, belonged to his late wife. But this fight was turning out to be so interesting, and he had no desire to stop it. He will deal with his daughter later. Gaudria collided with Hashi, and both of them tumbled and fell on the hard ground, leaving the people stunned at the strength Cyrus had portrayed. No ordinary shifter could pull this off. Gaudria let out a hurtful grunt as he gathered himself and stood up to see his yellow blood leaking out from holes Cyrus had left in his skin. "You are dead, shifter," he growled, and blindly rushed to him. Hashi forgot Cassandra for a second, and focused his attention on Cyrus as well. His gold-dusted eyes were the same color as his hair now as they rolled in his sockets, judging the enemy rushing towards him. The crowd watched the battle from the edge of their seats, too stunned at what was unfolding. The vines sprouted feet away from where he and Cassandra stood and tried to wrap themselves around his ankles, but he jumped and shifted again into a hawk, this time. A mighty hawk, which had razor-shaped claws. It instantly attacked Gaudria's face and plucked both his eyes out in one swift move. Gaudria hollered in immense pain. The crowd roared while Cassandra was left shaken at the move her partner had pulled. Did he just turn into a hawk from the half-hedgehog human hybrid? What in the names of the gods was he? The yellow, putrid-smelling blood oozed from Gaudria's eyes as he sank to the ground holding his face. Without wasting a single second, Cyrus's claws dug into the skin of his face and twisted his head. Crunching sounds could be heard as the head was ripped clean off and thrown towards Hashi by the mighty hawk. Its brown, feathery wings, which spanned at least 3 meters, flapped mightily in the air. His beady, angered eyes remained fixed on Hashi. He had dared harm Cassandra with poisonous vines. Hashi screamed in horror, seeing the beheaded body of his comrade and the hawk's dangerous eyes focused on him now. "Nu, I yield, I yield," he shouted, shaking on his legs. He had understood they were no match for Cyrus and whatever he was. Cassandra had cut off all the vines that were trying to wrap themselves around her feet and poison her, and the rest retreated as soon as Hashi yielded. While Cyrus shifted back to his human form, Thalorian couldn't help but dumbfoundedly ask the Alpha sitting on his right, "What in the world have you sent?" "An abomination," he answered with a knowing chuckle. His eyes shone with pride. The crowd erupted in loudest cheers, seeing what Cyrus and Cassandra had pulled. They had been underdogs until they saw Cyrus transforming into 2 different animals and Cassandra chopping away the magical vines like vegetables. No attack had been able to even scratch them. The gong went off again, announcing the match was over. Cyrus had shifted back to his human form, and his clothes hadn't slipped. They were back on his body where they were supposed to be. Cassandra stared at him in bewilderment, as he took her hand with a smirk and raised it in the air, announcing their victory. "What are you?" Cassandra apprehensively asked, ignoring the delectable sparks tingling where their skin touched. Her whole concentration was on him, Shifter. He carefreely answered as they walked off the bloody ground while the crowd still celebrated. Shifters don't turn into hawks and hedgehogs. They turn into werewolves, or only one kind of animal. This was very rare. "What kind are you?" Cassandra jerked her hand free from his hold, and she could only do it because he let her go. "A unikand, nice sword." Cyrus tried to shift the attention from himself. Cassandra sheathed her sword and didn't stop glaring. "You could have informed me, and what does your Alpha even want with me? Why am I living through all this bloodshed?" she asked, furious at how Cyrus was unbothered at taking a life. It seemed so natural for him. "You will see once the arena ends." He slumped on the paved ground in the small room they had been instructed to wait, while the other matches took place. "If he is trying to win any favors from my father through me, he will not succeed. My father doesn't care what happens to me." "I thought it was evident enough," she seethed out, still shaking from the experience of the arena as she crossed her arms on her chest to keep it from heaving and pressed her legs together so they wouldn't shake so much. "Nor does your sister or that ill-looking fiancé. I wonder what you did to piss so many people off," he playfully stated. His eyes held a tease. They had returned to their original golden shade. "Existed." The single word was uttered by her with such pain that all that tease dropped from his eyes and was replaced by anger and fury. Getting up slowly, he approached her like a cheetah. With his skin, eyes, and hair, he indeed resembled one. Cassandra tried to take a step back, but hit the wall behind her. He casually invaded her personal space, observing how her heart rate accelerated every time he was in her proximity. "That's not in your control, but how you use it to your advantage, that's surely Island." His hand reached out as if he wished to touch her cheek, feel the flushed skin under his fingertips. But she turned her head in unease. His other hand landed right beside her face, caging her in between. "I don't need dictation from you on what to do. You can't understand my position or what I have to go through." Cassandra tried to shuffle away from him. Their chests almost touched. Cyrus let out a scoff as his nostrils flared, not only in anger. Point. How can a lowly slave understand the predicaments of a princess who lives in a castle and has never done a day's labor? What a miserable life you must have. There was almost a hint of mockery in his voice as his eyes scanned her. She quickly turned her head, understanding he had taken her words wrongly. "That's not." She began, but was interrupted when they were called for the next match. "Princess Cassandra, it's your and your warrior's turn," the guard announced, and she nodded. Cyrus let her go and backed away, but his expression seemed soured. "Let's go," Cyrus said before exiting the room, and Cassandra quietly followed, carrying her sword. "Prolong the match for the crowd. Don't go for killing intent. Your opponents will do the same," King Valerian's orders, one of the guards conveyed. Cyrus seemed apprehensive, but he decided to go for the plan. It was always fun to play with the enemy. They arrived back in the pit, which held the mingling smells of sweat and blood now. The roaring in the stands was getting louder, seeing Cyrus. They hadn't seen a shifter who could turn into multiple animals. That was pure entertainment for them. This time, they faced a mage and a lion shifter, a werlion, who were extremely rare. Cassandra was unfamiliar with the mage. He was someone new. The smirk he held told her he had his eyes set on her, and the way Cyrus kept guarding her with his body made her seem even more vulnerable and the weak link. The gong sounded, and the shifter didn't waste any time transforming into a huge lion with a brownish-orange glistening mane. His size alone was intimidating. He raised his head and roared loudly, sending the crowd into a frenzy. Cyrus accepted the challenge and jumped, transforming mid-air into a lion as well, a white one. His size and roar were even louder than his opponents. They clashed, with claws outstretched and fangs bare. The mage eyed Cassandra. She had her sword out as he flicked his hand, and she saw the blinding blue light dancing at his fingertips. He had the electric affinity, and her sword wouldn't help her against him. He raised his hand, and electricity cackled above, darkening the skies. A thunder was heard as the air split and became charged from the current. It flew and went straight for Cassandra, ready to burn her to a crisp. "You are dead, princess," he remarked, almost tasting the victory on the top of his tongue. The sweat broke out on her forehead as her legs uncontrollably shook. Cassandra shifted just in time and jumped sideways as a bolt of electricity fell to where she had been standing a second ago. A blue halo had formed around her, and the second attack was repelled by it. The crowd roared in enthusiasm from the edge of their seats. Even the chief guests watched with keen interest while chomping on the rare fruits and glazed meat. She watched in amazement, how there was a protective halo around her. The snarling of the lion had her eyes lifted to where Cyrus was. He had jumped towards the mage who had been attacking Cassandra. The lion shifter was clinging to his hind leg but was profusely bleeding from the injuries Cyrus had given him. The mage's magic pulsed as he directed his attack from Cassandra to Cyrus. The electricity cackled in his hand as he tried to shove it into Cyrus's hairy chest, but was repelled and flew to a distance of a few feet, baffling everyone. "Woo!" The crowd roared in the stands. The high-ranking guests were befuddled at how the mage's attack was dispelled. Cyrus landed on his fallen body on all fours. The mage had his face contorted in fear, and before he could attack the huge lion again, Cyrus' huge jaw opened and his fangs descended on his face, mangling and tearing it. Mage's shouts of horror filled the arena's air, but were soon muffled as Cyrus tore out his windpipe. The other lion was trying to injure Cyrus by tearing at his thick skin from behind as he tore his partner apart, literally tearing him from limb to limb as his angry snarls silenced the crowd. Cassandra was horrified at the brutality she was witnessing. She wished to sink into the ground, but her barbarian partner was fighting two opponents alone. Gathering herself up and mustering all the courage that existed in her body, she rushed to the opponent. Her glistening sword, embroiled in a magical glint, stretched out. "Ah!" She screamed in pain and pierced the sword into his belly with brutal force. The magic pulsed all around her like flickers of fireflies, gathering in her sword and turning her attack fatal. A loud, painful screech was let out by the gigantic creature as it let go of Cyrus and fell to the ground. Its head flailed to one side. It breathed its last, and its amber eyes closed. But Cyrus hadn't even stopped mauling the body of the poor mage who was long dead. His eyes he had plucked out of sockets, and nothing much remained apart from the big crimson puddle of body parts and insides. Seeing the mess, Cassandra's stomach unsettled, and turning around, she retched, throwing out whatever was in her stomach. The gong sounded again, announcing their victory, but the guards had to intervene and separate Cyrus's hulking self from what remained of the poor mage. The defensive magic was put into effect. Cassandra was guided out by a guard, and quite a few were needed to control Cyrus. The crowd was wild, though. They loved a massacre. The man sitting beside Thalarion had a smirk going as he muttered under his breath while taking a sip of fine wine from his goblet. Typical Cyrus. That warrior is befitting for our arena, and the crowd seems to love him. I would like to keep him, Thalarion said in amusement, seeing the crowd's reaction. Let the final match complete, he cryptically answered. The amusement danced in his yellowish, orange eyes as well as voice. Back in the room, Cassandra dropped to the floor as far away as possible from Cyrus. Her sword clattered to the ground. He shifted in his human form, but blood had completely splattered his body and face. His leg was injured from where the lion shifter had mauled it, but the wound was already healing, and he didn't seem to care. His bloodshot eyes wandered to a scared-to-wits Cassandra, and he grumbled, "Injured?" She fearfully shook her head and gathered her legs closer to her chest, trying to become as small as was possible. Bloody bastard, going for a kill, underestimating me. He spat out, the blood dripping from his chin. Cyrus had thought they would play around a bit, prolonging the match for the entertainment of the crowd as he had been told. But the mage had tried to kill the princess with one shot, and it had pissed him off to no bounds. By the time Cyrus saw electricity crackling on his fingers, he had already launched the first attack with the intention of killing. Did they defy the king, or does he desperately want his daughter dead? Seeing her condition, Cyrus could sense she was soft, too soft, not fit for this world, or his. His world was far bloodier than this one. How she had survived so long baffled him now. The fear had crawled up her big violet eyes, and she refused to make eye contact with him. Cyrus grabbed an extra piece of cloth lying there and began wiping the filthy blood from his body. He was pissed would be an understatement. His mind was blasting with 1,000 ideas at that moment, as his eyes kept flickering to the girl in the corner. She was blankly staring at her hands. "You did good." He tried to bring her back to reality, and her teary eyes flitted towards him. "I just took someone's life. What good did I do? Not that a barbarian like you can understand that. It comes naturally to you," she shouted at him in disgust. The tears finally fell from her eyes, and his heart ached. Her words stung like the scorpion's stinger. "It's the arena. You kill or you get killed. Did you want to die, princess?" he asked, suppressing his anger. "It's better to die than live like a bloody killer," she retorted back. "Not everyone is raised to be a killer." Her whole body was shaking at this point. She couldn't believe she had just taken someone's life. "So that's what you think I am? A killer and a barbarian?" His left brow arched so gracefully as his lips thinned into a straight line of displeasure. "Think? Haven't you shown it so openly? Not a shard of remorse did I find on your face," she accused, wiping away her tears with the back of her hand. She hadn't planned to shed them in front of him. "Pardon, I didn't have the time to mourn the people trying to kill us, Princess Cassandra," he mocked. His voice upped a notch. It thundered, and Cassandra visibly flinched at his raised tone. Her lips quivered and she bunched them together to keep them from downturning further. He instantly regretted it, but before he could speak, she shifted her body and turned herself away from him. Facing the wall, she closed her eyes, letting her head rest on it, praying that this horror would soon end and she could go back to her life, not knowing her whole life was about to be toppled. Cassandra sniffled now and then. Cyrus wished to console her, but he wasn't sure what words to say to her without hurting her further. She needed space to calm down from the experience she had. Cyrus sat with one leg straightened and the other bent. His arm rested on his knee, while his upset eyes remained sealed on Cassandra. Every small cry that left her throat was like a whetted blade that slashed away the layers of his skin, dug through his bones, and jagged his heart. Hours went by when they were finally called for the final match. The shadows of evening had begun to elongate, but floating lanterns and torches lighted up the whole arena. Huge fiery cauldrons had been placed in the stands as well, to keep the place glowing. Stephanie and Prince Cayman were the other finalists. Prince Cayman's father, Monarch Drudius Aslai, was one of the guests of honors. Both kings shared a camaraderie, and their kingdoms were close. Stephanie and Kamen were more than partners as well. They were lovers and were the favorite couple of both kingdoms. It was rumored this year's victory will result in both of them getting engaged and soon will be married. They had flown into the finals, butchering their opponents. Both of them were remorseless killers, and they had the same plans for Cyrus and Cassandra. On the other hand, Cassandra didn't even wish to look at her partner and wanted this nightmare to end. The endless nightmare of blood and gore. Stephanie and Kamen walked out hands in hands, fake smiles on their faces as they waved to the overexcited crowd. The people hollered, chanting their names. Cassandra and Cyrus walked out in silence. "Princess Cassandra!" He tried to speak to her before exiting, but was only met with silence and a glare. She slowly walked out with a heavy heart. Both couples faced each other as the presenter began to speak. Welcome to the grand finale of this year's arena. On the right side, we have the crowd favorite and our reigning champions, Princess Stephanie and Prince Kamen. Thunderous claps followed his words. On the left side, we have the underdogs who have against all odds performed exceptionally well. Princess Cassandra and her warrior, Cyrus. Slightly less frenzied shouts followed. The crowd had really enjoyed Cyrus's madness. Let the final match begin. May the odds be in your favor. May the gods bless you. The presenter concluded his speech. Still alive, sister. I am impressed. Stephanie taunted, clinging to Kamen like a leech she was. Cassandra stared back at her sister with blank eyes and didn't grace her with a response. Let's end this, Kamen, and put them out of their misery. Spiteful chuckles fell through her lips as the gong went off. Cyrus glared at them with such animosity but decided to stay quiet. The quietness before the storm. Instantly, that same blue halo was formed around Cassandra, the one that had repelled attacks in the previous fight. She was confused if this was from the gemstone or some spell from Lotus. But why didn't it appear in the first battle? Cyrus covered her completely with his body. His hand clutched her wrist, and he held her behind him while his calculating eyes focused on the enemy. Stay close to me, he instructed in a tight voice, and Cassandra gulped. Her free hand clutched her sword, which was thumping with magic. Cassandra had given a very lengthy description of what kind of powers Stephanie possessed. He had gotten a glimpse of it when she had attacked Cassandra the very first day he had arrived. She could leech power from almost anything in her surroundings and transform part of her soul into dark shadows, attacking and wrecking whatever stood in her way. She was one powerful witch. Kamen was a vampire, blessed with super speed and strength. As soon as the battle began, Kamen shifted from his place instantly, running around them in a zigzag circle. He considered himself invincible, trying to distract them so Stephanie could cast her shadows. The arena ground began to darken as Stephanie let her shadows loose. They crawled from her, silent like wraiths and dark like the deepest pits of tar. They instilled fear in others' hearts. Unknowingly, Cassandra gripped Cyrus's arm as she felt her throat going dry. He sensed her fear, crawling up his spine, and knew it was time. Like a single streak of lightning, Cyrus reached out and grabbed Kamen by the neck as he neared him like a whirlwind. Kamen was taken by surprise. He hadn't anticipated such speed from Cyrus. Shifters were fast, but they were by no means as fast as vampires. He failed to understand how he even saw and caught him. The shadows curled around Cyrus's ankles as he held Kamen by one hand while he lifted Cassandra onto his back with the other and began to shift. Kamen struggled in his rough hand as his eyes bulged, seeing how Cyrus's eyes changed color from the straw gold to crimson, just like his own. His face lengthened, scales protruded out, and his whole body began to elongate while it lifted in the air. Two majestic black wings shot out. Cassandra's breath had been lodged in her throat as she felt Cyrus's smooth back become scalier and rougher as he rose higher and higher. She couldn't help but hold on to him, fearing for her dear life. Below, the ground was covered with extensions of Stephanie's shadows. They would choke one in seconds, but for now, the one being choked was Kamen. He was trying to speak, but the chokehold of Cyrus's scaly claw had on him was too much. Stephanie shouted from below, "Let him go, you freak of nature." The fear was so evident in her voice and eyes as her shadows tried to reach Cyrus. A deafening roar was hurled which silenced the whole arena, for it was so loud the very walls and ground shook from it. They watched mesmerized as the majestic creature finally dropped the struggling prince, only to raise his head and breathe out a roaring, hellish torrent of fire. Lowering it, the storm of fire was directed towards the falling prince. It caught him mid-air, setting his whole body on fire. The melody of horror and scream began as the prince hit the ground, burnt to the crisp, for the fire was enough to even turn rocks to molten lava. He was mere flesh and bones. Stephanie's eyes almost dropped out of her sockets as her shadows receded and she frantically ran towards her lover. Dropping on her knees, she let out a painful howl of pain. The creature set its eyes on the wailing woman who had rushed to the burning prince and was calling for ending the match, but the majestic beast had other plans. His deep carmine eyes were focused down below. His maw opened again, just to repeat what he had done before, and end the wretched life of this despicable woman as well, who had dared hurt the stunned out of her brain woman on his back. Cassandra was about to lose her mind seeing the majestic creature she was clinging to for her dear life. The creatures had become extinct centuries ago, and here he had transformed into the mightiest black dragon which was ever seen. The wings spanned at least 12 meters. He overshadowed the fighting pit below. The cries of astonishment could be heard from the crowd seeing the creature which now existed only in myths and tales. He dipped his large scaly head and opened his gigantic jaw, and Cassandra understood what he was about to do. Her sister was down there, mourning the loss of her partner, and he was ready to send her right after him to the underworld. Mustering up whatever courage she had left, Cassandra choked out in a quivering voice as she grabbed the upper part of his thick neck. "Nu, please. Spare her." The dragon remained hovering in the air, his wings fluttering as he contemplated Cassandra's words. Stephanie's shrill voice rang out from below. "I yield." But it bordered on her madness. The dragon raised its head and let out a victory roar. The sound was deafening as Cassandra covered her ears with her hands while trying to keep herself steady on its scaly, rough body. The gong went off announcing the completion of the match in mere minutes. This had been the shortest final match the arena had ever seen. There was an uproar in the special guest area on the raised podium. King Drudius was losing his mind, seeing his son being burned to live by such a creature. Though Larian and a few others were trying to pacify him and ensure he didn't do anything ridiculous and lose his own life too, for no one knew what Cyrus was actually capable of. "I am going to have his head. He killed my son," Drudius yelled as his guards surrounded him and held him back. Everyone held bewildered expressions except the Alpha of Duzartine. He was pursing his lips to not laugh. It was taking him quite an effort. The crowd had gone into a frenzy. They were mesmerized by the dragon, but Prince Kamen was their favorite. Seeing him die instead of announcing his engagement to Princess Stephanie had sent them into a state of perplexity. The dragon elegantly landed on the ground. The mages had gathered all around Princess Stephanie in the arena, fortifying their protective shields. They didn't want to risk it with the dragon. He bent his legs and spread one of his wings on the ground while folding the other. It was to serve as a passageway for Cassandra to climb down if she wished. She was still clinging to his body like a scared child does with his mother. Gradually, she untangled her arms from around his neck and let him go. She willed herself to climb down, using his wing as steps. He casually watched her like an obedient pet, waiting to be petted for doing a tremendous job. A wailing Stephanie was led away, while the charred body of Prince Kamen was carried away as well. "What have you done?" Cassandra murmured to him in shock, staying close to the dragon. Her heart was about to jump out of her chest at the implications of his actions. To her surprise, she didn't fear the gigantic creature. She was finding him fascinating now that the initial shock had worn off. He watched her with his huge crimson eye. She was trembling from head to toe, thinking of the consequences. This could mean an estranged relationship with vampire kind, and her father would put all the blame on her. In answer to her question, his slimy, forked tongue darted out, and he gave her face a long, wet lick. taking his time to savor the taste of her soft skin as he had wished from the moment he had laid his eyes on her, ensuring the world watched his actions as he wagged his enormous spiky tail behind him. Flabbergasted, Cassandra tried to take a step back only for his giant wing to wrap around her, keeping her in position, closer to him, slurping her overly flustered face. Cassandra was blushing down to her bones. Only if that pit would open and engulf her, for this was embarrassing beyond words. What the hell was wrong with this man? Stop, what are you doing? She protested in a small voice, trying to wipe off the slobbering saliva from her face. He didn't listen, and continued with his shenanigans while the world watched, holding their breaths. A few men had entered the arena ground, and now they surrounded them as the mages shifted back, giving them space, but also weird glances. All of them had bronze skins, just like Cyrus, but none of them was as tall as he was. They stood with their heads slightly bowed in reverence, and their strong hands clasped in front. Just like him, they wore minimal clothes and had lean, muscular bodies. One of them held what seemed like a crown made out of bones and feathers of an eagle and hawk. The crown was magnificent to look at, with its intricate design of bones held together, and was surely fit for a king. The other one held a flimsy gown of a very soft material, with desert flower patterns and hues of gold and rust. Cyrus finally let go of Cassandra with one last lick and transformed himself back into his human form. Wrenching away the slave collar from his neck, he threw it away. His eyes had changed into pots of molten lava. Gold and red mingled with countless emotions. All the men who seemed to belong to his pack bowed in respect, seeing him stand tall and confident. The one with the crown stepped forward and placed it on Cyrus's head. Alpha! He took a bow, and Cyrus nodded at him in acknowledgement and replied, Rano. The other one handed him the gown, after a bow which Cyrus quietly accepted in his large hand. Cassandra was watching the exchanges with her feet boring into the ground, shivering with her eyes widened to triple the size. Goosebumps had graced her arms and legs. She wished to move away from this dangerous and unpredictable man, and yet she couldn't. Everyone else was mesmerized by the turn of events. Cyrus turned his head in the direction of Thalarion and spoke in that deep, resonating voice of his. It seemed to have become authoritative. King Thalarion, you promised a gem from amongst your wealth for the winner. I would like to claim your most valuable gem, your daughter. As the Alpha of Dusartine, I claim her as my mate, for she is my fated. His words were spoken with clarity and loud enough for everyone in the arena to hear. Although it was brimmed to its full capacity, yet there was a hushed silence, the one that comes before a storm. Cyrus had stepped closer to a shell-shocked Cassandra and wrapped the gown around her quivering body, although it was shaking with rage now as the tears abundantly danced in her eyes. She tried to shrug the gown off, but Cyrus held it there. Alpha? Destined mate? What was this deranged man talking about? Loud gasps from the crowd and guests followed. Even Thalarion was left stunned for a second at the revelation. You are the Alpha of Dusartine? And he? He pointed to the smirking man beside him, still confused. His younger brother, the name is Ferris Dusartine. The man introduced himself with a rolling of his hand forward, trying not to laugh at the bewildered expressions of everyone around him. Thalarion nodded with an astonished look and turned his attention back to Cyrus. I wished to see my mate and get to know her a bit before I claimed her. And you, a man of honor, will keep his word. It's crucial for the alliance. So what is your answer? Cyrus asked, his eyes wavering back to Cassandra, who was silently crying now. Her father wouldn't be this callous to hand her over to someone so cunning and deceitful. She would beg him if she had to. Shifters had other shifters as their mates, not mages or someone like her. I am a man of my word. Cassandra is yours to keep from today onwards. Rest we will discuss in my private chamber with some wine. Join me there, he announced, followed by a gratitude speech for the crowd and other guests. Thalarion knew his work was cut out for him. An alliance was about to be formed while the other one was about to crumble. That's all he cared about. Not this daughter, but Stephanie, for she lost her lover. Cassandra's world shook violently and then crumbled. She blinked, trying to clear the tears from her eyes as she stared at her father and tried to digest his decision. Searching for any remorse or compassion that might linger, she found none. She wanted to scream that it was her life, that she had a say in this, but it would only result in punishment. What were the chances this man would be any different from her father, who didn't even ask her if she wished to be with him? He was a remorseless killer, and now she knew he was the bloodthirsty alpha the whole South wouldn't stop whispering and murmuring about. She felt his rough hands around her shoulders, and she instantly shrugged them off, as if he had burnt her. Swiveling her head in his direction, she yelled out in frustration, "Don't touch me. I will never leave with you." Cassandra stumbled away from him and his greedy eyes, who wouldn't stop raking her up and down, for she was more than flesh and bones. "Your father just made that decision for you. Come, we have to talk to your father before we can leave. It's quite a journey to my pack. We should set out at dawn." Cyrus gallantly offered his hand, but Cassandra only watched him with wary eyes. "Don't make me carry you over my shoulder, princess," he threatened, his swirling eyes taking in her reactions to his words. She slowly gasped in shock, and once it wore off, the expression was replaced with anger. Like a wild kitten, she was so ready to attack him. He couldn't help but be amused at her actions. There was so much she needed to learn. "Renaud, bring your future Luna along to her father's chamber. I need a word with my brother," Cyrus told his beta, and with difficulty he tore his eyes off her. "Alpha," Renan acknowledged with his eyes dipping low. "Don't even think about touching me," she sternly warned Renan. She had her arms around her in protective embrace, as if fearing they would hurt her by some means. Not understanding they were his loyal men who would lay their lives for her and blind any eyes which dared gaze at her wrong. Unlike her own people, who had cheered to see her die. "I wouldn't dare." "Follow me, Princess Cassandra," Renan requested. His voice was kind, much kinder than his alpha. Giving in, she finally followed them to her father's chambers. Raziel was her last hope. Even though he didn't like her much, he was never cruel to her. At times, he had been kind, and they were engaged. He might intervene and stop whatever Cyrus was trying to cook. She could only wearily watch his broad back, the layers of tanned muscles flexed and relaxed there. She was literally terrified of the guy who could even turn into a dragon and burn people alive. When they arrived, Thalarian was already seated in his throne-like chair with Raziel by his side. Both of them carried grim expressions. Cyrus sauntered over like a proud beast and perched himself in a cushioned seat reserved for the guests. Spreading his legs open, he sat in a relaxed position, seemingly untroubled. Faris had propped himself right beside his brother. Cassandra quickly walked over to Raziel and halted in her tracks because of his dismal visage. "Commander Raziel, I am your fiancé. Isn't it your duty to guard my honor? Are you going to let someone else take me?" she demanded, holding back her tears. Her hands balling into fists, she so frustratedly wished to hit something. Raziel flinched from her tone and could sense her pain. "This is going to be interesting. Gods and goddesses love to torture you, brother," Faris teased, leaning closer to his brother and popping an almond into his mouth. Cyrus grunted, but his ever-darkening eyes remained fixed on his seething mate. He hoped she wouldn't touch the other man, or he would have to kill another one today. "Silence!" Thalarian's stern voice rang out as he tightly clutched the armrest and addressed his daughter. Cassandra's mouth went dry like a desert at her father's command, but she knew she had to speak for herself. She held her tongue in front of the people of the kingdom, but she needed to speak. "I am also your daughter. A daughter you betrothed yourself. And now you are sealing my fate by giving me away to some alpha in exchange for an alliance. Do I mean so little to you?" she demanded with tears shining in her eyes. Thalarian's nose flared in rage as he dismissively said, "You will do your duty and go with Alpha du Sartine, as I had announced." "I am your daughter. How can you shove me in the arms of a killer?" Cassandra asked, her voice strained, her eyes looking for any mercy on her father's face. Cyrus was expecting such words from his mate after what he had done in the arena. "You dare ask that after you stole that gem from me? One more word, and I will forget you are my daughter. I will punish." Thalarian's sentence wasn't even complete when Cyrus threateningly growled, No one will lay a hand on her, or I will cut it into 1,000,000 pieces. Don't disrespect Mimate. She may be your daughter, but you will tread with respect." Thalarian's colder than eyes flickered to Cyrus, and the room shook with his magic. It danced on his fingertips. Wisps of it shot out and swirled in the air, charging it. Cyrus's men instantly covered him too, ready for any skirmish that might break out. Ferris took an attacking stance. His yellowish-orange eyes challenged Thalarian. "Don't tell me how I need to speak and discipline my daughter," Thalarian grumbled, feeling his magic threatening to let loose. This man and his actions had cost him a long-term alliance with Vampire Monarch, and now he was dictating on how to speak with his daughter. Cyrus appeared unperturbed. He contemptuously smiled at Thalarian's hypocrisy. "She is my mate now. I claimed her. You might be her father, but who shoves his daughter into the arena knowing she possesses no magic? You could have refused, informing me that she hadn't awoken her magic yet. But instead, you turned her into a negotiating tool. She means nothing but a cow's fodder to you." Cyrus disdainfully answered, drumming his fingers on his knee, as if taunting Thalarian. "A mage without magic is a taboo in our kingdom. She wasn't even supposed to live, my wife was. Just like you, she is an abomination of nature I am forced to call daughter. So yes, if I can forge an alliance by handing her to you, I would do it in the blink of an eye, because you have caused me one with the Vampire Monarch." Thalarian's words were like daggers for Cassandra. They stabbed her insides, and they ripped her vulnerable heart open. But she decided at that moment she was done begging these men. They didn't care for her decision. They didn't care for her heart. They certainly didn't care if she was dead or alive. "Then it's fitting for one abomination to have the other one. I want that good-for-nothing commander of yours and you to sign away all her rights to me. I will be in charge of all her decisions from this day forward. She belongs to me, and my loyalties will belong to you. Any brewing wars that might come, you will have my unending support." Cyrus took the opportunity to seal the deal with Thalarian. He wished for Cassandra to have nothing to do with them. He had seen enough to understand that apart from Lotus, no one cared for her. Razian bristled at being called an ugly name. No way he was good for nothing, but he didn't dare speak in front of his king. Thalarian wanted to seal this deal quickly. "I agree to the terms. Let's sign it, and you can claim your mate and take her away." Thalarian clicked his fingers, conjuring a parchment of paper and a quill from thin air. Cassandra watched as her life was bargained by men, from the hands of one to the other. She felt suffocated. The air had been sucked out of her lungs. Unable to bear it anymore, she turned around and pushed the door with both hands. She rushed out, her heart breaking from the betrayal of her family, from people who were supposed to protect her. Cyrus helplessly watched her go. He knew he needed to make an insurmountable amount of effort to win her heart. Wiping the tears with the back of her hand, her feet carried her to Lotus. She must have heard the news already, for a very frantic Lotus met her midway. "Heavens, Cass, my poor Cass." She gathered her younger sister in her arms. Cassandra completely broke down in her arms. Not ever had she felt so vulnerable and so very disposable. "Father sold me to a remorseless killer. He is going to take me away, and I will never see you again," she wailed as Lotus held her. Her own tears were wetting her round face. "I am so sorry, Cass. I will go talk to our father. How can he do this? And why didn't Commander Razian do anything about it? When is he going to step up as your fiancé?" Lotus was getting angrier by the second as she tried to comfort her little sister. Her heart was breaking over and over again. They all had wronged her, and now she was about to be handed over to some alpha shifter. She very well knew how ruthless and barbaric they were. Cassandra was soft and delicate. She didn't deserve this. "My hands are tied. I can't help Princess Cassandra." Razian spoke up as he had followed Cassandra and heard what Lotus had said. His voice was relatively tender, and so were his eyes as they wandered on Lotus's crying face. "You are just a coward. I will fight them alone if I have to, but I am not letting them take my sister." Lotus's words were sharp, meant to jab him, and they did. "My princess, please. You need to understand that the treaty has been signed. Breaking it will mean war. After what happened in the arena with Prince Kamen, the vampires won't sit in peace. He tried to speak like the commander he was and saw the situation methodically. Lotus was more emotional. She didn't understand his logic or care about any damn treaties. She cared about her sister. "You are pathetic, Commander Raziel." She gave him a loathing, dismissive look and walked away with Cassandra, holding her slumped shoulders and still trying to assuage her. He watched her with guilt flashing in his eyes and his heart in shambles. Every time he tried to get closer to Lotus, she would shut him off, and after this, she wouldn't even spare him a glance. Lotus took Cassandra to her room, shut the doors and stood in front of it. "I will not let them take you even if it costs me my life," she declared, crossing her arms. In her pink floral gown and jewelry, she seemed like a princess of flowers, but for now, she had turned into Queen Bee, ready to protect. Suddenly, the door was blasted open as the grisly shadows crawled underneath from it and darkened Cassandra's room.